Hi, welcome to the installment of the final chapter on Q-vectors. The reason why this is the final chapter on Q-vectors is because Vortrix Algebra is superseding Q-vectors. And so what I need to do is put a little video at the end to tell people that this is being continued with a different mathematics. Well, not totally different, but a superior evolving or an evolution of Q-vectors is Vortrix Algebra. Now, just to put things into context, because I haven't made an edition on this video series in a long time, is that Q-algebra was an improvement over classical vectors. However, there were still some shortcomings which are highlighted in the next few pages with the rules of acquisition. The Vortrix Algebra is a new video series, and the release date is TBD. There will be an introduction video coming out shortly on Vortrix Algebra to kind of give the context. So this is one of the pages from the Q Algebra. It's video UQ104. And could not reconcile the dimension P with X, Y, Z to develop a simple rule to automate this for any number. The explanation above shows that P takes on behaviors of both dimensions and scalars, and renamed it to the Q dimension for quasi-scalar. This I was never happy with because it's ambiguous. And it was a way to get to an end, but I was never really truly happy with it. And it goes on a little bit to one of the next pages. Okay, to say that, even though the Q dimension is there, it's not a fairy tale. It consists of products from the actual multiplication of vectors which don't fit into normal space as space is classically defined. And then here's the prophetic part. Perhaps as more time goes on, a different definition of 3D space will arise which will map the Q components back to a normal space. This is what Vortrix Algebra did. Okay, but until then we should treat Q with the same respect as we do imaginary dimensions in the complex number theory. Well, that's just it. What has happened with Vortrix Algebra was actually defined the imaginary dimension, and all this comes together. Vortrix Algebra actually makes imaginary number system obsolete. But anyway, going back to this ambiguous Q continuum, that's what the 17th rule of acquisition has been annoying me about for the longest time. And here's the intro slide to the 17th rule of acquisition, which is the ambiguity tell, which says that the ambiguity in a model or theory indicates that the model or theory is a special case of a more fundamental explanation. In other words, it doesn't mean that an ambiguity does not mean that the theory or model is necessarily wrong. It could be wrong, but the more important thing we derive from this is that there is a better explanation. There should be an explanation without ambiguity. And that's what Vortrix Algebra is to Q algebra. So in the Vortrix solution, the Q is eliminated and all products are rationalized as very simple constructs. We're not going to get into what they are here. Okay, the other rule of acquisition that has been riding me is the 6th rule of acquisition, which prior knowledge is problematic. In other words, what happens to us humans is we get in our bug that certain things must be a certain way because that's what way we've been doing it for hundreds or thousands of years. And one of the things from Q algebra is that I was holding on to this idea that the cross-dimensional products form normals in other dimensions. For example, this would be x and y. The cross between x and y forms a normal in z. Z equal to 3. Q algebra, for Vortrix Algebra, this got all shit canned. The cross between x and y has nothing to do with z. And we'll give a little more detail on that in the next page or two. So by recognizing that cross products do not form normals was one of the major breakthroughs for Vortrix Algebra. It opened the proper vector definitions for sine, vector cosine, vector sine, vector tangent, and a whole bunch of other things that was being obscured because of this wrong notion that the cross products form a normal. Because, I mean, think about it. Think about this. Let's say you have a vector in x and another vector in y. Well, according to the classical cross product, the normal for that would be z. But let's say you have a four-dimensional system where your dimensions are x, y, z, and I don't know, a would be your fourth dimension. Well, if your vectors in x and y, then the problem you run into is that both z and a are normal to that. So which is your normal? And that was part of the ambiguity that prevented me from going beyond 3 dimensions with the old Q algebra. Vortrix algebra can go beyond 3 dimensions because we get rid of this notion that a cross product forms a normal. Okay, and one of the other problems is, okay, let's say we say that a cross product does form a normal. That means a vector times a vector forms a vector. But wait a minute. If these two cross products form an area, that means this normal has units of area even though it's a direction? How does a direction have area? There's so many problems with that classical thing. Anyway, there's many other subtle problems, such as contradicting identities. So that's what Vortrix algebra is. But what's happened is some of the notation, the cool notation from Q algebra, was adopted by Vortrix algebra. So some of the notation, even though the underlying mechanisms are different, the notations of left and right divide, left and right multiply, were still adopted because they're still valid in Vortrix algebra. And I want to give a shout out to my patron subscribers for being patient. Okay, Vortrix algebra is a vast improvement over existing mathematics, and we have to get it right. I mean, we don't want to sit here and just rush something out just to keep people entertained. You know, this is going to be a big change to science and mathematics, I think. As far as I'm concerned, it's the best mathematics we've come up with in a long time. It's not perfect yet. There's still other things that need to be defined, but it resolves most of them. So, like everything what we do in science, we come up with something better until we find out where it doesn't work, and then we improve it again and again and again. That's how science progresses. So, I didn't want to rush it out. I didn't want to, just try to get it out there quickly. And my Patreon members are very patient, and they understand that this takes time. And they understand the limited time I have to devote to this, and I really appreciate them being patient. And so, thank you. No more voodoo physics. There's going to be an introduction video to Vortrix algebra. We'll cover this probably pretty much in the same detail as an introduction video. Thank you.